Curriculum of the United Nations. The World Core Curriculum of the United Nations was written by Robert Mueller, the aforementioned follower of Helena Blavatsky and her satanistic beliefs. And he was firmly wedded to these and the belief that they needed to capture kids in the education system to prepare them for the New World Order. So our exam system is based on the education policies of these mad fruit bats. And that, I think, is something that people should focus on. Your kids are being trained and indoctrinated and taught. And you possibly, if you're listening and you're young enough, have been trained and taught to think in this way. And to you, it seems absolutely normal. But if you know who the people are who are pulling your strings and rattling your chain, you're better placed to wake up and start, readjusting your thinking. But if you're never warned about this, you'll never get that chance.
It is said that a person needs to hear the same thing 7 times by 7 different people. You can't tell the same person the same thing 7 times and have them get it. It has to be 7 different people saying the same thing. And I think this is why people in this truth movement, as has been called, are experiencing a lot of frustration and pain as a result of going out and attempting to quote-unquote wake people up, is because they think that they can do it alone, and they get remarkably disappointed and mistakenly give up entirely on waking people up and hold a pin on their fellow man and think, oh, nobody can be saved. There's no gonna... Look, it ain't all your responsibility. All you got to do is play your part and hope that 6 other people play theirs. That's all it is. Don't put the whole world on your shoulders.
It is about passing it forward and hoping that things go viral. I mean, one of the issues with our book is that people were ringing up and buying 10 copies at a time because, as so many people spoke to me on the phone, they said, look, all this is on paper that I've been concerned about for years. I've suspected. The conspiracy websites, they make these sort of claims, but they don't really provide any hard evidence. And you've gone and nailed it back down to the original source documents. We love you for it. I'll take 10 copies, please. And each one of those people is paying it forward. They're effectively giving the gift of knowledge, if you like, to their mates and their family and friends and so forth. And the idea goes viral. So you're right. Those people are having other people come to them and dump books on them. I saw a book review in Australia. Totally unexpected. Somebody had gone and bought the reviewer a copy of Totalitarian in Perth and dumped it on them. And the reviewer ended up giving the book 6 stars out of a possible 5, which I was grateful for, as you would be as a struggling author. But this is the point. Until people read it and hear it and understand it, the context isn't there. And even this radio show, or my own radio show, we can't really cover in a radio broadcast the nuances and the evidence that people need to really get their heads around some of this stuff. And a lot of the stuff you do and I do, because it's too complex. All we can do is draw attention to it and say, look, the information's out there. But people at the end of the day have to get off their backsides and read it. Because only when they've seen the evidence for themselves with their own eyes will they believe.
Now, there's a number of different media apparatus that are being used. Now, I'm sure you realise as well as I do, Ian, that one of the best methodologies of brainwashing is to infiltrate the media, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how anybody could...
I'm not sure brainwashing is the right word, though. There'd have to be brains in place in the first place to do it.
Well, yeah. Granted. But the point here is... It's about, I think, actually what I had to realise about what my chosen career is now, I guess it's kind of not much of a choice, rather a lack of options, is I'm a counter-propaganda warfare agent, more or less. Would you see yourself in such a way, to a degree, considering who your enemy is
I get
ignorance,
I get accused of being a counter propaganda warfare agent. Look, we both, all of us have a role to play, and at the end of the day, we can't. As I said earlier, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. All we can do is offer the evidence and say, look, this needs further investigation, or here is the evidence. It's absolutely clear. One of the things with me in my brand of journalism is I'm not afraid to stand up and fly against the current if that's where the evidence is taking me, even though it might make me seriously unpopular. Look, I'm as aware as the next person. It'd be far easier for me to take the easy road and to give people what they want and expect to hear. I'd be a rich man if I did that. But I couldn't live with myself. And that's the truth of it. As I said in the Kahui case, it would have been so easy for me to interview Maxina King and then do a hatchet job on her and paint her in the worst possible light and give the public, the baying public for blood, what they wanted. I would have sold 50,000 copies of that book if I'd done that. But I couldn't live with myself for doing that because it wasn't right. It wasn't the truth. All we can do is try and battle the propaganda, as you so correctly put it, unceasingly.
Yeah. It's kind of like a protracted war, and it's these secret societies that you have exposed in your book in Totalitaria ad nauseum. One in particular that I'd like to discuss is the Fabian Socialists. These are some very, very dangerous ideologies that are coming up, and I know that we're coming. Are we coming to the end of the show in about less than 10 minutes? Aren't we, Ian?
Close to it.
Okay. Well, for those who are unaware of what Fabian socialism is, there's two symbols that I've seen, sigils, if you will, that symbolise Fabian socialism that they've actually adopted for themselves. The first being a tortoise with a hammer. The philosophy behind that meaning they're very, very, very slowly move towards you, and just when they're right next to you, wham! They get you with the hammer. The other symbol for Fabian socialism is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, Fabian socialism in New Zealand, I've looked up this, and you should see all the left-wing journalists and bloggers and things of this nature who like them on Facebook.
Yeah, it is shocking, and it is the. I talk in Totalitaria about what I call a convergence of opportunities, and what I mean by that is that the principle of globalization is welcomed by different groups for different reasons. They share a common cause, and we're at this perfect storm moment in history whereby you have politicians who believe in globalization for political power, predominantly those of the left, but sometimes those of the right. There are business corporations and global corporations who believe in globalization for the sake of market efficiencies and making maximum profits by conducting their affairs in countries with the cheapest labor and the lowest regulations. There are lobby groups and charities who believe in globalization and world government because they stand to gain contracts out of that, and they see it as politically acceptable for them and the missions that they're trying to accomplish. And you just look at the climate change bandwagon and the lobby groups and charities that are involved in that, making billions off it. And then there are spiritual globalists, and they are the people we've talked about in Totalitaria as well, the Helena Blavatskys and the theosophists of this world, who believe they are ushering in world government to bring in the coming one, in short, Satan. They call him Satan. And they have spiritual reasons for globalization, but nonetheless they all share a common cause. And so these groups join together loosely in various forms and work towards this common cause, and they adopt various aspects of their belief systems as they need to in order to move forward together on various things. And so you get this tie-in between big business and new age evangelization and environmental causes. There's a massive tie-up, and if people want to know what this is like, go and look at the money earned by Greenpeace worldwide and Oxfam and Worldwide Fund for Nature and so forth, off donations since Al Gore's movie An Inconvenient Truth. They have made billions in donations by scaring the public about climate change. There is money to be mined in these mines, and they are doing it left, right, and centre. It's extremely cynical. I mean, the reason Greenpeace does some of the things that it does, I put this on the record. I was a Greenpeace donor for years, for about a decade, after the Rainbow Warrior bombing, But I eventually became wary of the politicisation and the propaganda that was taking place, because I was working in TV3 and we would be fed these Greenpeace videos that they'd taken themselves from Lord knows where. And they were regularly feeding material into the news networks and effectively manipulating the news coverage of various events. good on them for doing it. It's just propaganda 101. But I suddenly realised that they were tying all these campaigns and media releases into their donation campaigns. And they'd start running TV ads calling for donations on the back of them. And I realised that these charities are making massive amounts of money, and it's non-taxable, or was non-taxable, because of their charitable status at the time. So everybody in this world is making money one way, shape or form. It's just that a lot of them are saying we're doing it for altruistic reasons, and they're hoodwinking the public. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to sort of look at the motivations and so forth, and this convergence of opportunities explains why the Fabian socialists, there's a group called Socialist International, and Helen Clark is a senior figure in that group. And they have a clear pathway to world government. They're an advisor to the United Nations. They've written an exploratory paper for the UN on achieving global governance and what has to happen to do that within the next 10 years. Now, their plan dovetails with the Theosophy plan as well. But Theosophy is providing the ideological, spiritual aspect of it and the control of the public through education and belief systems. Socialists are providing the framework and the governance mechanism, the politicization of it. So all of these different groups are working in concert. And that's what I'm trying to explore in the book. I mean, the book is not just about, devil worshipping nutcases and fruit bats. It's also about the Edward Snowden issue, the surveillance that's going on. And the point that I make there is that people may have, in the mainstream public, no problem with surveillance on Islamic terrorism. But the problem is this. If we agree to the level of surveillance that's going on in our private lives on the premise of combating terrorism, that infrastructure will stay in place forever. And when it comes to the new regime, they'll suddenly have infrastructure in their hands that is capable of quelling dissent very rapidly. And so those same people who welcome it today for a narrow purpose won't be so happy with it in 10 years' time when it's used against them.
Yep. It's the old adage. What was that? The guy who was quoting, first they came for the Jews, but I didn't stand up because I wasn't Jewish, and so on and so forth. And I think these people have figured out quite a brilliant plan. I mean, you got to hand it to them, Ian. They've well thought it out. They've well planned. However, what I've found about the lesson of history is even the best formed plans that have been protracted over many, many long periods of time can be messed up in very, very short periods of time significantly by individuals. It's actually pretty straightforward. Part of the great thing about being human is that we're endowed with immense quantities of power. I'm not talking about it's just a little bit of power, only a few people can do a few things or whatever. I'm talking about unfathomable, you don't have any idea how much courage you have until it takes X amount of courage to survive what you're going through. You don't know how strong you are until your strength has been tested. And I think what has happened to society is that we've been wrapped in bubble wrap for so long that we think we still need it, both for our minds and our bodies. We don't. Yeah, well,
this is the whole nanny state argument that you go back 100 years when nanny state didn't exist and you had to survive on your own. People were tougher, much tougher than they are now. Today, we expect the government, the state, to do everything for us, cradle to the grave almost. And we whine and we whinge and we complain when the state doesn't provide the various services we think we're entitled to. The risk of that, sure, we can go providing entitlements to everybody till the cows come home, but the risk of that is that we effectively dumb ourselves down. Not only that, we enter into a contract with the state where we sell our souls. And that's what's happening. But the state feels it can have more and more and more and more control of your life because it's paying more and more and more money to look after you. And that's the paradigm. That's the contradiction that we have to face.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, what was it? My two favourite pieces of advice I was given by Jack Bloody's American talk radio show host. Been talking about this kind of stuff that we've been talking about for 15 years, And when you're going into it, you will often find out that it's quite difficult, and the road is long and hard, and you've got to maintain some sort of a sense of balance. So I asked him how you did that. How did you do this for 15 years and still maintain on an even keel and not turn into some form of douchebag? He says, number one, drink. If I didn't drink, I would have gone frickin' nuts. Number two, take the money. If you're not doing if you're not doing anything evil, if you're actually doing the right thing, and people offer you money and they're not asking you to compromise what it is that you're doing, just take the money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if people want to support me, they're welcome to. I'll take as much money as they can give. Seriously though, they can get the books that I've talked about at Amazon.com or WIshart.com. It's easy enough, and if ebooks, they're available instantly. So I really urge people to read the material that's there, particularly in Totalitaria, because it's an eye-opening thing. It's getting great reviews across America and Australia. And the reason I've done the book is primarily to wake people up and to give them the evidence that they need to say, here comes the New World Order, this is what we need to be watching out for. It's not happening by accident, it's happening by design. And if you realise what the plan is and how it may affect your life, then you'll be much better placed to try and sidestep it.
Mm. Did you think about turning it into an audiobook? Because as soon as I started reading it, I was like, man, I would love to read this out as an audiobook.
It's funny, I gave a speech last night, and people made the comment after I gave my presentation, the book really came alive. It'd make a fantastic movie, but no one would believe it. It's just staggering, but it's if you've read it, the book is based on fact.